Lesson 120 is on the volume of a cylinder. Now what you do to figure out the volume of a cylinder is you take the area of the base and you call that just like that circular face. Now a cylinder, the sides are parallel, so the top and the bottom could both be called the base. And what you do is you calculate the area of that base and then you multiply it by the height between those bases. We'll just call that h. And that will give you the volume of a cylinder. Now remember, volume is measured in length cubed. Area is length squared. Perimeter is just length. And so we need 3 measures of length multiplied together to get length cubed. And so think about this. The area of one of the bases of a cylinder, that's going to be equal to pi times the radius squared. That's what we learned back in lesson 130. Now they haven't told you that yet in the book, that the area is equal to pi times the radius squared, but I'm going ahead and doing that. I think that's important to know that. Now you take that and you multiply it by the height, and that gives you the volume for a cylinder. Pi r squared times the height, or the distance between those two bases. And just keep that in mind. In geometry, either one of those circular faces, circular surfaces, we can call those a base just because one of them's on the top, one of them's on the bottom. In geometry, we refer to both of those as bases. Let's compare finding the volume of a cylinder to the volume of a rectangular prism. And again, we would have an area of one of the bases times the height. We do that the same way. We just call, one side the length, one side the width, and so we say volume is equal to length times width times height. So it's a similar idea as to calculating the volume of a rectangle or rectangular prism as it is the volume of a cylinder. You can do them both the same way, area of the base times the height. Now look at this cylinder. Let's figure out the volume of this cylinder. It has a height of 8 inches, a diameter of 3 inches. How could we figure out the volume of that? Well, let's just think about our formula, pi times the radius squared times the height. So we have pi times the radius. We are given a diameter, so the radius would be 1.5, or we could say 3/2 as well. Let's just write 1.5 times 8. Now if you want to, I think it's okay on geometry problems to use a calculator, because the purpose of this problem is not to see if you know how to do multiplication. The purpose is to see if you know how to use the formula, what formula to use to figure out that problem. And so we have pi times the radius. Don't forget that's squared, so we need to put a squared power up there, and then times 8. And so let's go ahead and do this. We'd be saying pi times 1.5, we'd do that twice on our calculator, times 8. And we remember that pi is equal to 3.14. And so we can just say 3.14 times 1.5 times 1.5 times 8. And then hit your enter or equal sign, whatever your calculator has on it, and round it to 2 decimal places, 56.52. Now some of you may have a scientific calculator that has a button that has that pi symbol on it. You can just press that if you want to. Then you hit times 1.5 times 1.5 times 8, and you'll get a little bit different number than if you just type in 3.14, but just round it to 2 decimal places. Now, that's the number part of our problem. Our units are inches here, so we need to write inches cubed. Remember, we did inches times inches times inches for that problem. Volume is always in length cubed, and so that's part of that problem. Half of the credit on that problem goes to writing the units down. 56.52 inches cubed is the volume of that cylinder. So remember this formula for volume of a cylinder. Pi times the radius squared, that's the area of the base, and then times the height, the distance between the bases. Well, that's all for lesson 120, and that's all for Math 7-6. Congratulations, you are finished.